Let's talk about open source intelligence. You guys from ServiceNow recently released the Apriel 1.6 model last Tuesday, and today is the Nemotron 3 launch. Thank you guys so much for coming on to talk about it. So as we're talking about open source intelligence, a lot of people might be kind of surprised to hear that ServiceNow is not only building open source models, but building really good ones. Some people might be surprised to go on the Artificial Analysis Index, and as they go down and they see a really smart model in the intelligence that's very small, around 15 billion parameters, and see a logo that they might not recognize, and it's from ServiceNow AI. And so what would you say to people who ask you, why is ServiceNow building models at all, let alone open ones?
That's a great question, Kara. We get asked this question multiple times. Let's take a step back. Let's really understand the needs of ServiceNow. And by the way, they are the same needs for other enterprises. We want models that are faster, smaller, and that can solve our use cases. So we're going to build intelligence on top of some of the open models. If you look back last year, there was a dearth of open models in the West. And we tried to use a lot of other models and finally said, why don't we build one? Why don't we build one? And it can be used for open community also. So that was the main reason of building Apriel. And if you think about it, it's a 15 billion parameters, fits on one GPU, right? We focused on quality. Think about it, it scores 57 on artificial index. For that size of model, it's amazing, right? And we released it to community because they can further fine tune it for their use cases, same as what we do in ServiceNow. We take the open source model, we actually fine tune for other specialized intelligence which ServiceNow use cases need, and then we deploy it to production. So it's a win-win when we go this route of open sourcing.
Yeah, I think we share a lot of the same sort of thoughts around open source here inside NVIDIA, and it's the reason why we're announcing the Nemotron 3 family of models today, with Nemotron 3 Nano that launches today, as well as a bunch of data sets and recipes. The Nemotron family of models is meant to be the most open models that we can bring to the ecosystem that are incredibly smart for their size. We believe that a faster model is a smarter model, so we optimize for things like throughput, and then we also want people to build on top of them in the same way that ServiceNow does, which is why we release a lot of the pre-training and post-training data sets. Both of those are new versions. We'll talk a little bit later about how you used the Nemotron pre-training data sets for your models, as well as even some things around RL data sets, and of course the training recipes and the tools for how we built Nemotron are all open source as well, because we want the world to have better, smarter intelligence, and we know that open source is a key mechanism to deliver that. So going back to the Apriel family of models, you released 1.6, which was an evolvement of 1.5, which was already an incredible model. How do you think about how you're building these models and what it takes to go into creating an incredibly smart model at this size?
Yeah, so I think when we started building the Apriel series of models, we wanted to demonstrate that, to get to like frontier level of intelligence, you don't really have to like spend a lot of compute. There might be like smarter ways to do this. And like Srini was saying, there are enough resources and artifacts in the open source ecosystem that you can just take and adapt to your own use cases. So as part of what we do, we're trying to like really demonstrate with the right mid-training, post-training techniques that you can get to the frontier of performance on our own use cases, and also like a lot of use cases that the open source ecosystem cares about. And one of the key innovations that was there in Apriel 1.5 was the mid-training recipe. So we actually focused on creating a lot of like synthetic data sets that would like improve the model's performance. And when it comes to like 1.6, the key innovation was the post-training that went into it. We really scaled up some of the SFT and like RL methodologies that we employed to train the model.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's my understanding that you actually you talked about artifacts in the open source, and many or some of those might have come from NVIDIA. What from the Nemotron family or other things from NVIDIA did you use to sort of build this incredible model?
Yeah, so as it's been seen in the recent past, like I think NVIDIA is arguably one of the largest contributor to the open source ecosystem. This is like really nice to see. And we also have like a great collaboration partnership with NVIDIA. We like chat with researchers from NVIDIA, like time to time discuss our roadmap. They're also very open about talking about like what they're up to and like what's coming up for NVIDIA. So I think what we're most excited about is, for example, in the Nemotron family of models, you guys recently did Nanotron V2, and we leverage Nanotron V2's pre-training data set to serve as like the substrate data for our mid-training. We actually like do like a very extensive mid-training phase, which is what gives us the lift in performance. And Nanotron's pre-training data set was like, very, very pristine, very well curated. And I think building on top of that made it like super easy and like saved a lot of time for us. I think it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the 1.6, I think it was, roughly 15% or so of the pre-training data was actually from this data set, and we're releasing today the next version of that pre-training data set. Yeah. I'm excited to see what you guys will hopefully be able to build on top of for that one. Yeah. I want to pivot just a little bit and talk about the sort of relationship between both closed source foundational models and open source models. We believe that, of course, there's a place for both. And in enterprise AI, I'm curious how you see that relationship evolving.
Carter, I think it's all about optionality. We need to give people the option of using open source as well as the closed source frontier models in conjunction, right? I believe, or we are big believers, like majority of our use cases can be solved by smaller models. You don't really need to talk to a trillion parameter model. It gives you the advantage of latency, it gives the advantage of cost efficiency, and we don't believe there will be any quality differences. So, and there are use cases which you need to go to the frontier models, the closed source models, right? So it's all about giving optionality. And in fact, one of the projects I was super impressed by NVIDIA is that router technology you guys are introducing. And if you have, I believe in maybe in 12 to 18 months, you'll have open source and closed source models working together to give the best experience for end users. And that's where I believe both come together.
Yeah, on the, because, again, the Apriel 1.6 is a 15 billion parameter model. It's quite small. And where do you see the sort of types of use cases, especially in enterprise AI, for which those SLMs, the small language models, really shine, and where they're actually the best fit for the role as opposed to, say, a closed source foundational model?
I think if you look at most of our benchmarks, right, think about Agentic, which is the number one use case of enterprise. The open source models are almost there. They perform as good as any closed source models, right? In terms of instruction following, which is a key for enterprise, open source models are almost there. Like there are a few benchmarks which move towards AGI, where the open source models are behind. But do enterprises really need those use cases? Most likely no at this point of time. So for things which are all about agentic, I believe open source models are there. Then the beauty of open source is you can take the open source model, further fine tune it for your domain specific use cases. And a lot of enterprises have those. I think together is what makes open source so compelling.
I couldn't agree more, and I think at NVIDIA we couldn't agree more as well. When you're talking about the SLM and you're talking about it in an agentic AI use case, we're a firm believer that a faster model is actually a smarter model. If you think about, how quickly you can deliver on both, tokens for reasoning, as we know, which is very important. But ultimately, in the case of like ServiceNow, the time to completion of a task means that you can deliver more value to your customers. And one of the really interesting things in Apriel 1.6 was the focus on actually reducing the number of reasoning tokens, but keeping all of the necessary steps of logic to make sure that there's no degradation by reducing that. Sathwik, can you talk more about like what went into that to making sure that it'll talk less, but still be able to do more?
Yeah. So when we did Apriel 1.5, we actually had not extensively like post-trained the model. It was just SFT. And as you know, scaling test time compute obviously like improves model performance beyond what that size of a model can do, right? And the goal for us for Apriel 1.6 was basically to try and use some post-training techniques to try and improve the compute efficiency. So like, can we get the model to like consume less number of tokens as it did previously, but still keep the performance? And a key to doing this was actually being able to like construct the right kind of reward functions and like the task objectives to like get the model and incentivize it to actually consume lesser tokens. We actually like without getting into all the gory details, like constructed enough tasks and enough incentives for the model to encourage itself to like actually stick within a certain set of tokens to solve the problem. And I think this works great for enterprise because now for very simple questions, the model doesn't actually think as long, but wherever it needs to think a lot more, it spends a lot more time processing the request and then produces a response. So yeah, that's basically what we kind of tried to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so cool to see how even within paradigms, whether it's reasoning or post-training, even just simple fine-tuning, how there's still a lot of juice left to squeeze in terms of where we can create, incredibly smart models at varying different sizes for varying different use cases. And speaking of use cases, I want to hear more about the relationship of customizability, right? You have base models, whether in the open source or closed, but of course with the value of the open source is that you can, take the weights and actually increase its intelligence or its performance on your particular use cases. I sat down with somebody else from your team to discuss the document intelligence and your benchmarks for that and sort of how you measure a model for your specific use case. How do you see the relationship with Apriel 1.6 and the customizability to continue to push the values for specific enterprises with specific problems?
So if you think about it, right, when we bring a model, open source, or in fact Apriel in this case, right, we want to make sure all our use cases work at the highest quality, at frontier model level quality, right? And there are specific things which our use cases actually need. From as simple as we need 100% JSON fidelity. It's a very underrated thing, but if you're not 100% fiddle, a lot of applications break. To specialized code generation, to understanding invoices which are of lower quality or like highly pixelated, right? So there are tons of use cases which we have downstream. And when you are chasing AGI, some of these things might not be super important for a frontier model. For us, it's super important that we bring those requirements back into our fine-tuning phase. So we actually look at, once we go through the industry benchmarks, we actually measure our model with all the use case benchmarks we have built over the past couple of years. And a lot of them have baked into the enterprise SLAs or requirements which are needed. So we measured them, we fine-tune it further to make sure all our use cases work at the frontier model level, or even better.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sathwik, you mentioned earlier around leveraging some of the tools from NVIDIA, and it's my understanding that you guys, are a relatively small team, and of course are able to produce fantastic work. What else from the ecosystem, from NVIDIA or otherwise, has been sort of paramount to your success in building these models with a small team and still being able to create something that obviously will not only drive value for ServiceNow, but for other enterprises as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the team behind Apriel is actually, like you mentioned, really small. We're about 20 researchers trying to, do something cool, I guess. And building a model takes a lot, from evaluations, data sets, training infrastructure, evaluation infrastructure, data quality. There's just way too many things to be worrying about. And with just 20 people, it's usually not possible to do everything. And I think this is where we're able to talk to and collaborate with researchers and product folks from NVIDIA, figure out what what commonalities exist between the roadmaps of the Nemotron teams and our team, and then see if there's any artifacts that could be reused. I think so far there's been like two of them that's kind of noteworthy. We use Nemo Evaluator from time to time because, as you know, like Nemo Evaluators been this framework where we're trying to like bring in all these different benchmarks so that everybody can just use the same framework to like run multiple different metrics and like get to know how your model performs. And this really helps because like we don't have to worry about as many benchmarks. So like we really see it as, okay, let's use whatever is in the Nemo Evaluator, and like whatever else is not, let's try to like incorporate it somehow, right? And Nemo Curator was another one that we've been using from time to time whenever we want to like maybe dedupe data or like stuff like that. So like we now have a version of Nemo Curators, so to say, with all of the customizations that we want. So this essentially saves us a ton of time because now we don't have to like rebuild things. We're also able to like talk to your researchers and just let them know that what's kind of important to us, and if they think that this makes sense, they also like tend to incorporate it in their roadmap. So this has been really great. It saves us a ton of time and allows us to focus on what we want to focus on, which is mostly like mid-training data quality, post-training data quality, mid-training infrastructure, post-training infrastructure. Another thing that I also want to mention is for most of our post-training, we use Pipeline RL, or we tend to use Whirl. And like for doing reinforcement learning, one of the key requirements is for you to have like scalable rewards and environments, and hence the model can like really learn from a lot of diverse tasks at the same time. NVIDIA recently announced this initiative where you guys are trying to like build Nemo Gym. So we've been chatting a lot with people working on that to try and see if we can incorporate support for our post-training stack, and like make it compatible with Nemo Gym so that like we can maybe contribute to Nemo Gym. The open source community contributes to it. Maybe NVIDIA already has like a whole bunch of environments. So this actually like greatly accelerates the open source ecosystem. Like anybody, not just ServiceNow, but I feel like anybody in the open source community can just leverage these artifacts to like do something faster and better.
Yeah, I think, as of today, you were talking about the Nemotron 3 family launch, and with Nano coming out today and Super and Ultra on the way. But we wanted to disaggregate all the things that it takes to build these incredible models and give them all to the community so that anybody who has a piece that they need, whether it is Evaluator or Nemo Gym or Nemo RL or the data sets or the recipes, they can use any parts of that, one or more, because you're exactly right. I think that giving the pieces to the ecosystem and letting people build the models on top of it or build whatever they're building on top of it is ultimately how we can push this entire industry forward together.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of people think about when they're talking about either building on an open source project or a model is the nature of is this actually something that's going to be continued? And I think I already know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear how you guys view Apriel evolving as a model family and the other things that you're working on in the open source. And same thing with Nemotron. This is the one launch of many. We want to continue building with the ecosystem. So how do you see not only this collaboration evolving, but also specifically the open source AI for ServiceNow?
Sure. If you look at the whole year, Carter, so we started with Apriel 5e, then we had an Apriel Nemotron 1.5, 1.6, and then we did Apriel H. We're going to launch Apriel Guardian. So we are quite invested in it, right? And not just the models. If you take a step back, there are a lot of foundational things we open source also, which help build models. Fast LLM, which is our training stack. Pipeline RLS, Sathwik talked about, which is our RL stack, right? Then we open source something called AU harness, a harness to evaluate audio, and I think it's going to be Nemotron evaluator sooner, right? everything we use to do data generation has been open source. So we are committed to making not just the models, but building the foundational aspects of it, and help the community build on top of it. You want to add something?
Yeah. So I mean, I think we also like look at it from two perspectives, right? One is research, one is like actually maybe ServiceNow as a product and platform. From a research perspective, we really want to demonstrate that you are able to like push the frontiers of model performance with compute efficiency, and also like, you know, just demonstrate that you don't maybe need to be spending billions of dollars if you're just trying to accomplish a certain set of tasks that you're really interested in. And we're also like trying to demonstrate that there's efficient ways to like modify existing architectures, make it more better. Like Apriel H was an example of this, where we took a transformer version of Apriel Thinker and converted it into a transformer SSM hybrid, which just demonstrates that, you know, you can keep improving and pushing on the frontier of efficiency. But we also hope that as we push more and more open source artifacts, people get a chance to learn more about what's happening on the ServiceNow platform, like how these things are being incorporated into the actual products, and hopefully like inspire them to like maybe use ServiceNow more, because now, you know, they're able to like actually feel and experience how ServiceNow, you know, is like trying to push frontiers of research and like actually building great models. I would also not be wrong if I said like we're kind of inspired by NVIDIA's, you know, open sourcing spirit. Like, hey, let's just, you know, push out more things, inspire everyone. Let's build things together. So this is what, you know, we're kind of looking at.
I think we're quite invested. You'll see from us a lot more enterprise benchmarks. The world has very few enterprise benchmarks. We are going to invest in it. As Sathwik talked about, alternate architectures. We're going to, and I'm quite excited about what NVIDIA is going to release in the same space. We believe 2026 will be the year of alternate architectures in open source. That's something we are quite invested in it, right? So overall, Apriel, we have a series of models we have done in 25. 26, we believe, is going to be much bigger and better year for us. With the collaboration with NVIDIA, I think we can do a lot more.
I completely agree. I'm very much looking forward to it. You guys are the prime example of what we ultimately want to accomplish with Nemotron, right? Which is to have people build incredible stuff that is delivering value to your customers and overall improving the experience. And in the enterprise, which is an area that people are, you know, adoption's arguably more difficult in the enterprise. And you guys are really pushing that forward, not only internally. I think we always talk about how we should be our first customer. You can build around the problems you have and understand that those problems are probably not unique to ServiceNow or to NVIDIA. And how can we grow the entire pie for everybody? And you guys are again, a prime example of that.
And last but not the least, one of the things we talked very less is how our customers benefit from this, right? Even though we talk about open source, the ultimate goal is for us to make our customers super successful. And the way we make them successful is by giving them something which is, as you call it, fast is the new intelligent, right? Something which is fast, something which is compact, something which understands their use cases way better than the frontier models. For us, open sourcing is one part of it, but actually what it solves for us is ultimately the customer use cases. We have more than 10,000 of them, and we are really hyper-focused on it. And open source is actually the foundation for everything we do in ServiceNow.
Yeah, it's always fun to think about the experience that the work that you guys are doing actually materializes into the person who is feeling or using the product, which in this case is more accurate resolutions, faster resolutions, everything just feeling snappier, better, and more efficient, to where I think that that is what, the enterprise software world is solving large problems for many people. And if we can even start to shave away some of those, think about how much, not only, obviously more economical value, but just the experience of day-to-day life with interacting with these tools is just going to get so much better. And I'm excited. I think 2026 is going to be the year of that, right? Where everything that you use starts to feel a little bit smarter, a little bit faster, and underpinning that is the work that you guys are working on, and that we're working on, and that the people who will leverage the new Nemotron 3 Nano and the models that come after it and the data sets will be able to build these incredible solutions.
We're all excited, Carter.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. We appreciate this. Congrats again on the April 1.6 launch. I look forward to future launches, and I'm hoping that you guys can continue to leverage the new data sets that we released, because I know that those are some of your favorite artifacts that we produce, and see what you guys can build on top of it.
Yeah, definitely. 2026 hopefully is going to be super productive, and we're probably going to end up doing like a whole bunch of models. So
yeah, I think 2026 is going to be the year of American models. Faster, cheaper, a lot more intelligent, with alternate architectures. I can bet on that.
Amazing. Well, thanks everybody so much for watching. If you have a follow-up question, feel free to leave it down below. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content.